Welcome to the Wine Lab, where science, culture, and the occasional fermented mystery meet in the glass. I'm your host, Andreea, and today we are starting a new series on the Wine Lab, exploring some of the most famous wine regions of the world, what they grow, how they make the wine, why they matter, and what we can actually taste in the glass. And we begin with one of the most influential of them all, Bordeaux. Bordeaux can feel intimidating from the outside. It has chateaus, classifications, communes, left banks, right banks, expensive bottles, affordable bottles, gravel soils, limestone slopes, historic trade routes, and enough French terminology to make a confident wine lover suddenly very interested in sparkling water. But at its heart, Bordeaux is a clear and fascinating story. It is a region shaped by rivers. It is a region shaped by blending. And it is a region where climate, soil, grape variety, human decision-making, and time all come together in wines that can be powerful, elegant, age-worthy, or surprisingly approachable. So, pour a glass if you have one nearby, preferably something from Bordeaux or a Bordeaux-inspired blend, and let's begin. Bordeaux sits in southwest France, near the Atlantic Ocean, in a landscape defined by water. 3 major waterways organize the region: the Gironde estuary, the Garonne River, and the Dordogne River. These waterways influence climate, soils, trade, vineyard placement, and even language we use to describe Bordeaux. You have probably heard of the left bank and the right bank. The left bank lies mainly west and south of the Gironde and Garonne. The right bank lies north and east of the Dordogne. Between the Garonne and the Dordogne sits entre deux mers, which means between 2 seas, although the seas are really rivers. France does have a gift for making geography sound like literature. Bordeaux's position near the Atlantic gives it a maritime climate. Winters are relatively mild, summers are moderate compared with hotter inland regions, and humidity is always part of the conversation. Rain can be a major factor, especially around flowering and harvest, and that matters because Bordeaux is not a place where every variety behaves the same way every year. This is one reason blending became so central to Bordeaux. In a variable climate, relying on one grape can be risky. If Cabernet Sauvignon struggles to ripen fully in a cooler or wetter year, Merlot may help carry the wine. If Merlot is challenged by frost, heat, or disease pressure, Cabernet Sauvignon or Cabernet Franc may help restore backbone and freshness. Blending is sensory design, but in Bordeaux, it is also agricultural insurance. And this is one of the most important ideas in understanding the region. The blend is not an afterthought, it is the architecture of the wine. Let's start with red Bordeaux because that is what most people think of first. The main red grape varieties are Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc, with smaller roles for Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Carmenère. Historically, all 6 belong to the Bordeaux family, although Carmenère is now much more closely associated with Chile than with Bordeaux itself. On the left bank, Cabernet Sauvignon often plays the leading role. This side includes historic names like Médoc, Haute-Médoc, Saint-Estèphe, Pauillac, Saint-Julien, Margaux, and Pessac-Léognan. Cabernet Sauvignon does well here because of the gravelly soils. Gravel drains well and stores heat, which helps Cabernet ripen in a climate where ripeness is never something to take for granted. Cabernet Sauvignon is a late ripening grape. It needs warmth, light, and time. When it ripens well, it brings blackcurrant, cassis, cedar, graphite, firm tannins, and long aging potential. The word graphite appears often in tasting notes for left bank Bordeaux. It does not mean someone sharpened a pencil into your glass, although wine language does sometimes make stationery sound strangely delicious. Graphite usually refers to a mineral pencil lead-like impression that can appear alongside dark fruit, tobacco, cedar, and earth. Left bank wines are often described as firm and structured. In wine terms, structure is the framework created by tannin, acidity, alcohol, and body. A young left bank Bordeaux can feel serious, sometimes even a little stern. With age, the fruit evolves and the wine may develop aromas of dried black fruit, leather, forest floor, tobacco, cedar, and sometimes truffle. This is why Bordeaux has such a strong association with cellaring. Some wines are made for earlier drinking, but the top examples can evolve for decades. Now let's cross to the right bank, where Merlot usually takes the lead. The right bank includes Saint-Émilion and Pomerol, two of the region's most recognized names. Here, soils often contain more clay and limestone. Merlot tends to perform well in clay because clay retains water and stays cooler than gravel, which can be helpful for an earlier ripening grape. Merlot generally brings plum, black cherry, softer tannins, roundness, and a plush texture. Cabernet Franc, often blended with Merlot on the right bank, adds red fruit, floral notes, spice, freshness, and aromatic lift. This gives many right bank wines a different personality from left bank wines. They can feel more generous in youth, more rounded, and sometimes more velvety. That does not mean they are simple. Pomerol, despite being relatively small and without the same historic classification system as the Médoc, can produce some of the most sought-after wines in the world. Saint-Émilion, with its limestone slopes and medieval town, offers a broad range of styles, from approachable bottles to age-worthy, complex examples. And this is where Bordeaux becomes useful for consumers. The region has a reputation for luxury, and yes, some Bordeaux wines cost more than a small appliance. But many bottles are much more accessible. A good Bordeaux Supérieur, a well-made Côte de Bordeaux, or a bottle from a less famous appellation can give you a very real sense of the style. Now, we need to talk about classifications, because Bordeaux loves classifications. It has several, and they can be useful, confusing, historically important, politically delicate, and occasionally all of those at once. The best known is the 1855 classification, created for the Exposition Universelle in Paris. For red wines, it ranked top estates from the Médoc, plus Château Haut-Brion from Graves, into 5 levels called growths, or crus. It also classified the sweet white wines of Sauternes and Barsac in a separate ranking. The first growth red wines became legendary: Château Lafite Rothschild, Château Latour, Château Margaux, Château Haut-Brion, and later Château Mouton Rothschild, which was promoted from second growth to first growth in 1973. The 1855 classification was based largely on reputation and market price at the time. It still carries enormous influence today, even though vineyards, ownership, winemaking, and quality have changed over the years. Bordeaux does enjoy preserving history in formal documents. If a chateau was famous in 1855, it is probably still putting that on the label with great confidence. There are other classifications too. Saint-Émilion has its own classification system, updated periodically. Graves has a classification that includes red and white wines, especially from what is now Pessac-Léognan. And Cru Bourgeois, mainly associated with the Médoc, can be an excellent place to look for quality without the highest classified growth prices. For everyday wine lovers, the main point is this. Classification can be a clue, but it is not the whole story. Producer matters, vintage matters, appellation matters, and your own taste matters, probably more than all the official paperwork combined. Now let's move from geography and history into the glass. A classic red Bordeaux blend is usually dry, medium to full-bodied, and built around fruit, tannin, acidity, and oak integration. On the left bank, expect more Cabernet Sauvignon character. Blackcurrant, blackberry, cedar, tobacco, graphite, firm tannins, and often a more linear shape on the palate. On the right bank, expect more Merlot and Cabernet Franc influence. Plum, black cherry, red fruit, violet, spice, softer tannins, and a rounder mouthfeel. Oak is also important. Many Bordeaux wines are aged in French oak barrels, and the proportion of new oak depends on the producer, price level, vintage, and intended style. Oak can contribute aromas of vanilla, toast, clove, smoke, coffee, cedar, or sweet spice. But in a balanced Bordeaux, oak should support the fruit and frame rather than dominate everything. A wine that tastes mainly like a furniture showroom has perhaps taken a wrong turn. Chemically, oak aging also influences texture and oxygen exposure. Barrels allow small amounts of oxygen to interact with the wine. This can help soften tannins, stabilize color, and encourage the development of more integrated aromas. Red Bordeaux, especially wines intended for aging, depends on this gradual evolution. The wine develops over time, first in the vineyard, then during fermentation and extraction, then in barrel, then in bottle. Tannins also deserve a moment here because Bordeaux is one of the great regions for understanding tannin. Tannins come mainly from grape skins, seeds, and oak. They bind with proteins in saliva, creating that drying or gripping sensation on the gums and tongue. In a young Cabernet-dominant Bordeaux, tannins can be firm and angular. Over time, tannins polymerize, meaning they form larger structures. This changes how we perceive them. The wine can feel smoother, more integrated, and less sharp. But aging is not magic. A wine needs enough fruit concentration, acidity, tannin, and overall balance to age well. Time can transform a great wine, but it cannot rescue a weak one. A thin, unbalanced wine left in a cellar for 20 years becomes an old, thin, unbalanced wine, possibly with sentimental value, possibly not with dinner value. Now, Bordeaux is not only red wine. It also produces remarkable white wines. Dry white Bordeaux is usually based on Sauvignon Blanc and Sémillon, sometimes with Muscadel. Sauvignon Blanc brings citrus, grapefruit, gooseberry, grass, and bright acidity. Sémillon brings body, texture, beeswax, lemon curd, lanolin, and aging potential. In blends, Sauvignon Blanc can provide freshness and aromatic intensity, while Sémillon gives weight and depth. The benchmark area for high-quality dry white Bordeaux is Pessac-Léognan, where some whites are fermented or aged in oak and can develop beautiful complexity over time. These wines can show citrus, stone fruit, herbs, toast, honey, and mineral notes. They are very different from the highly aromatic Sauvignon Blancs of places like New Zealand. Bordeaux Blanc can be more textured, more savory, and more restrained. And then there are the sweet wines of Bordeaux, especially Sauternes and Barsac. These wines are made primarily from Sémillon, Sauvignon Blanc, and Muscadel affected by Botrytis cinerea, also known as noble rot. Now, noble rot sounds like something a medieval doctor might diagnose with great concern, but in the right conditions, it can produce some of the world's most extraordinary sweet wines. Botrytis infects the grape berries and punctures the skins. Water evaporates, concentrating sugars, acids, and flavor compounds. The fungus also contributes its own metabolic effects, creating aromas associated with honey, apricot, marmalade, saffron, ginger, dried fruit, and sometimes a beautiful savory complexity. But noble rot requires very specific conditions: morning mist to encourage botrytis growth, and dry afternoons to prevent destructive grey rot. In Sauternes and Barsac, the meeting of the cool Ciron River and warmer Garonne River helps create the misty conditions that favor noble rot. Producing these wines is labor-intensive. Grapes may be harvested in multiple passes through the vineyard, selecting only berries with a right level of botrytis. Yields are low. Fermentation can be slow because the must is high in sugar. The resulting wines are sweet, but the best examples are balanced by acidity and complexity. They are luscious without being flat. If you have never tried Sauternes or Barsac, try one with blue cheese, fruit tarts, crème brûlée, or even spicy dishes. Sweet wine is one of the great misunderstood categories. People often say that they don't like sweet wines, but many have only tasted simple sweet wines. A great botrytized wine is another universe: sweetness with tension, depth, and precision. Now let's talk briefly about food, serving, and how to enjoy these wines. Red Bordeaux is famous with lamb, especially roasted lamb with herbs. Cabernet-dominant wines pair well with protein and fat because tannins bind with proteins, making the wine feel softer and the food feel richer. Left Bank Bordeaux works beautifully with steak, lamb, mushrooms, lentils, roasted vegetables, and aged cheeses. Right Bank Bordeaux, with its Merlot-driven roundness, can pair well with duck, pork, mushroom dishes, roasted chicken, and earthy sauces. Dry White Bordeaux is wonderful with seafood, goat cheese, grilled vegetables, roast chicken, and herb-driven dishes. The Sauvignon Blanc brings freshness, while Sémillon adds enough body to handle richer textures. Sauternes and Barsac can pair with dessert, cheese, or savory dishes where sweetness and salt create contrast. Serving temperature matters too. Red Bordeaux should usually be served slightly cooler than room temperature, around 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is too warm, the alcohol can feel more prominent and the wine may seem heavy. Dry White Bordeaux should be chilled, but not icy cold, because too much cold can mute texture and aroma. Sweet Bordeaux should also be chilled, which keeps the sweetness lively and refreshing. Decanting can help, especially with young Red Bordeaux. A young tannic wine may benefit from oxygen exposure, allowing aromas to open and the palate to feel more integrated. Older Bordeaux can also be decanted, but more carefully, often to separate the wine from sediment. With older bottles, too much air can cause fragile aromas to fade. Think of young Bordeaux as someone who needs encouragement to speak. Think of old Bordeaux as someone telling a delicate story. You do not want to shout over it. We should also mention vintage. Bordeaux is a region where vintage variation matters. Because the climate is maritime and rain can influence disease pressure, flowering, fruit set, ripening, and harvest decisions, each year leaves a clear signature. Warm, dry years may produce riper, more concentrated wines. Cooler years may produce wines with more freshness and moderate alcohol. Wet harvests can challenge grape health and concentration. Modern viticulture and winemaking have made Bordeaux more consistent than it was in the past, but vintage still matters, especially for premium wines. Climate change is reshaping Bordeaux as well, and this is where the story becomes especially interesting because Bordeaux is one of the most tradition-bound wine regions in the world. Yet, even Bordeaux has had to ask a very modern question. What happens when the climate that helped build your reputation begins to change? Warmer temperatures can help Cabernet Sauvignon ripen more consistently, which may sound beneficial at first. But heat, drought stress, higher alcohol, lower acidity, sunburn risk, compressed harvest windows, and shifting flavor development all create new challenges. Merlot, which is so important on the right bank, can be especially vulnerable when heat and water stress push ripening too fast. In response, Bordeaux has started looking beyond its classic grape family. In 2021, France's Appellation Authority approved 6 additional grape varieties for use in Bordeaux and Bordeaux Superior wines as climate adaptation varieties. The red grapes are Arinarnoa, Castets, Marselan, and Touriga Nacional. The white grapes are Alvarinho and Liliorila. These varieties were chosen because they may perform better under warmer, drying conditions while still allowing producers to maintain something recognizable as Bordeaux. But this is not a free-for-all. These grapes are approved in limited contexts as secondary varieties and only in small proportions. They are not meant to replace Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Sémillon, or Sauvignon Blanc. They are more like tools in the toolbox. A little more resilience, a little more flexibility, and a way for Bordeaux to adapt without completely rewriting its identity. That, to me, is one of the most fascinating things about wine regions. Tradition is often presented as something fixed, almost frozen in time, but in practice, it survives because people keep making decisions in response to the land, the weather, the market, and the glass in front of them. Even Bordeaux, with all its history and ceremony, is still experimenting. It just does it with paperwork, committees, and very good shoes. So, what makes Bordeaux so important? Part of it is history. Bordeaux became a major wine trading region because of its port and its connection to markets, especially England and Northern Europe. Part of it is quality. The region can produce wines of extraordinary complexity and longevity. Part of it is influence. Around the world, winemakers have modeled blends on Bordeaux, Cabernet Sauvignon with Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. In California, Washington, Chile, Australia, South Africa, and many other regions, Bordeaux-style blend has become a familiar phrase. But the deeper reason Bordeaux matters is that it teaches us how wine can be built. A Bordeaux wine is rarely about one grape speaking alone. It's about components: fruit, tannin, acidity, alcohol, oak, soil, climate, vintage, and human decision-making. Cabernet Sauvignon can provide backbone. Merlot can provide volume. Cabernet Franc can provide fragrance. Petit Verdot can add color and spice. Oak can shape the final frame. And bottle age can turn a firm young wine into something layered and expressive. And yes, Bordeaux has prestige. It has ceremony. It has labels that look like they were designed by someone who owned both a vineyard and a castle, because in some cases that is more or less what happened. But Bordeaux is also practical. It emerged from a real climate, real soils, real market pressures, and real agricultural decisions. Behind the Château image is a region that has spent centuries solving the same question every winemaker faces. How do we take what the season gives us and turn it into something balanced, expressive, and worth remembering? That is Bordeaux. So the next time you taste one, pay attention to where it comes from. Is it left bank or right bank? Cabernet dominant or Merlot dominant? Young and firm or older and more evolved? Is the fruit black, red, fresh, dried? Are the tannins grippy, velvety, drying, polished? Do you smell cedar, tobacco, graphite, violet, plum, cassis, herbs, earth? Does the wine feel like it wants food, time, conversation, or all three? And if Bordeaux has ever felt intimidating, let it become a map instead of a monument. Start with the rivers, then the banks, then the grapes, then the blend, then the glass. For this week's call to action, I encourage you to buy, taste, and share a Bordeaux wine or a Bordeaux-inspired blend from another region. And really pay attention to how the wine is put together. Taste it with food. Try it slightly cooler than room temperature. Notice the tannins. Notice the fruit. Notice whether it feels built for immediate pleasure, aging, or a little of both. And as always, I would love to hear from you. Send me your questions, episode ideas, tasting stories, or strong opinions about Merlot. You can find my email address on the podcast website page. Until next time, stay curious. Cheers!